I froze when I heard that hiss coming from the box my son sent me on Father's Day. The moment I lifted it, Gloria's voice trembled. "Don't open it, baby. Can't you see?" My heart pounded like a drum in the church basement on Sunday morning. A gift from my own son felt like a threat from a stranger. That's when I realized love had turned into something cold, something dangerous. I still remember the weight of that box, heavy with more than cardboard. What was inside would change everything. Subscribe for more stories like this and tell me in the comments where you're watching from. A week before that cursed box showed up on my porch, my living room stopped being a home and turned into a war zone. Marcus stood right there by the mantel, his voice raised, his eyes sharp with that kind of greed that doesn't come overnight. "You don't need it now, Pops," he said. "I need it while you're still breathing." The words hit harder than any blow. My son, my only boy. The one I carried through storms and Sundays now spoke to me like a man cutting a deal. I stared at him, trying to find the boy who used to kneel beside me at church, his tiny hand clutching mine during prayer. But that boy was gone. Gloria tried to calm the storm, her voice soft like gospel on a slow morning. "Marcus, baby, this isn't the way to talk to your father." But Marcus didn't even look at her. He paced like a man cornered, except he was the one doing the cornering. "You've got money just sitting there, Pops. You've got that rental property, the life insurance, the pension. What are you waiting for? You can't take it with you." I stood up slowly, my knees stiff from years of construction work, my voice quiet but steady. "That money is for your future, not your right now." He scoffed a sound that made my blood run cold. "My future is right now, old man, and you've had yours." Gloria stepped between us, tears forming in her eyes. "Enough," she said, but Marcus wouldn't stop. He pointed around the house like he was counting assets. "You sit here with your old books, your church plaques, your sermons. What did all that faith ever get you, huh? You think the Lord's gonna pay my bills?" The way he said "Lord" made my skin crawl. I looked at him and saw someone raised in my house but living in another world entirely, one that worshipped nothing but money. I felt something in me break, not all at once, but slow, like wood cracking under too much weight. I wanted to reach for him to tell him I'd always been proud, that I never cared about the money. But then I saw the coldness in his eyes. It wasn't hunger, it was calculation. He turned his gaze to Gloria and smirked. "You always defend him, Mama. But you don't see how he's been keeping you small. Look around, nothing's changed in this house for 20 years. You could have had more if he wasn't so stubborn about principles." Gloria's hands trembled as she pointed toward the door. "Marcus, you need to leave before you say something you can't take back." He laughed, that sharp, hollow sound that doesn't belong in a home. "You think I'm scared to tell the truth?" That was when I raised my hand, not to hit him, just to silence him. The same way I used to when he was a boy acting up in church. "Enough," I said. "You've said more than enough." He stared at me, eyes narrowing, his jaw twitching. For a second I thought he might strike me. Instead he picked up his jacket, knocked over the picture frame on the end table, and walked out. The sound of that door slamming echoed like thunder in my chest. For a long time the only sound left was Gloria's quiet sobbing and the ticking of the wall clock. I bent down and picked up the picture he'd broken our family at his college graduation. My arm was around him, his cap crooked, his smile wide and proud. I traced the crack across the glass right over his face. "I don't know who that man is anymore," I whispered. That night the house felt emptier than ever. Gloria tried to pray, her voice soft through the bedroom door, but I couldn't bring myself to join her. I sat in my chair by the window, staring out at the streetlights glowing against the Mississippi night. Somewhere out there, my son was walking around angry, feeling cheated by the same man who once gave him everything. The next morning I went to church early before sunrise. The pews were empty, the air thick with the smell of old wood and candle wax. I knelt and whispered, "Lord, help me see my son through your eyes, because I can't see him through mine right now." My voice cracked halfway through. No thunder answered, no sudden peace filled me, Just the slow, quiet ache of a father realizing faith doesn't stop heartbreak, it just gives you strength to stand in it. Days passed with no word from Marcus. Gloria said to give him time, that pride had a way of burning itself out. But deep down I knew this was different. I'd seen greed before, men in the congregation fighting over inheritance, siblings suing each other after a funeral, but never imagined my son would be one of them. Then 3 days later I got a call from Deacon Harris at the church. He'd seen Marcus at a pawn shop near the highway trying to sell a gold watch that looked a lot like mine. Said he was down on his luck, Harris said gently. I thanked him, hung up, and sat in silence for a long while. That watch was my father's. Passed down, not bought. The kind of thing that carries prayers, not price tags. That evening, Gloria cooked his favorite smothered chicken greens and cornbread, hoping he'd come by. But the seat across from me stayed empty. The house was quiet except for the hum of the old refrigerator and the sound of her whispering grace before we ate. I tried to chew, but every bite tasted like guilt and failure. Later, I found myself looking through old letters Marcus had written from college. Back then, he used to sign, "Everyone love you, Pops." I folded them neatly and put them back, but one stuck out, a note he'd written when he was 10. It said, "I want to be just like you when I grow up." I sat there for a long time staring at that childish handwriting, wondering when exactly that dream had died. When I finally went to bed, Gloria was already asleep, her Bible open on her chest. I turned off the lamp and lay there staring into the dark. The words from that day kept echoing. "You don't need it now, Pops." It wasn't just about money. It was about power control and a son trying to rewrite the meaning of family. I thought I'd reached the lowest point that night, but I was wrong. Because 1 week later that package showed up on my doorstep. And what was inside proved Marcus wasn't done with me, not yet. When Vanessa first walked into my house, she carried herself like she owned every room her heels touched. She sat on my sofa, crossing her legs slow, that diamond bracelet catching the afternoon light. Every piece of jewelry on her came from money that wasn't theirs. Credit, loans, favors. I could see the weight of it all hanging from her wrists, but she wore it like proof of victory. Marcus sat beside her, his arm draped across the couch, proud like he'd conquered something. The way she looked at me, eyes narrow, lips curling into that half smile, I knew exactly what was coming. "Old man," she said, voice dripping with sugar and venom. "You should think about letting the next generation handle things. Don't you ever get tired of pretending you're still in control?" The room went quiet except for the low hum of the ceiling fan. I watched the light flicker across her gold necklace and thought about how that money came from the same hands she was mocking. Hands that had framed their first house, fixed the church roof, and paid every bill when Marcus couldn't keep a job. I kept my voice even. "I'm not pretending, Vanessa. I just know what I built, and I know who I built it for." She laughed, a sound too sharp for the small room. "Oh, I know who you built it for. Yourself." Marcus didn't stop her. He leaned forward, elbows on his knees, letting her speak for both of them. That was the part that burned the silence. "I raised a son who used to jump up to open doors for his mother, and now he sat quiet while his wife spat poison in my living room." Gloria brought out sweet tea and set the glasses down, her hands shaking slightly. Vanessa didn't even say thank you. She looked at the tea, wrinkled her nose, and said, "We don't drink that much sugar anymore." I saw Gloria's jaw tighten. Then Vanessa leaned back, looking around at the photos on the wall, Marcus as a boy at his baptism, family barbecues, Christmas mornings. "You know," she said, tapping one long nail against her glass, "it's kind of sad you're still living here. Marcus and I were just saying this place could sell for a lot now. It's a big house for 2 people. Wouldn't it make sense to downsize while you still can?" I stared at her, trying to decide if she was cruel or just clueless. Probably both. "This is my home," I said. "It's where I raised my family." She smirked. "Families change." Marcus shifted in his seat, finally opening his mouth. "She's just being practical, Pops. We could help manage things, keep you from getting overwhelmed." "Overwhelmed," I repeated, my voice low. I built this house with my own hands, Marcus. Every wall, every nail. Nothing here overwhelms me. Vanessa sighed, pretending patience. That's exactly what we mean. You've done your part. It's time to let go. The way she said let go made it sound like dying. I looked at Marcus, but he wouldn't meet my eyes. His thumb rubbed the edge of his wedding ring over and over, a nervous habit from when he was a boy. I remembered teaching him how to fish, how he'd flinch the first time he caught one, afraid of the hook. He wasn't afraid anymore. I stood up and the chair creaked behind me. Let me tell you something, I said quietly. Respect isn't something you outgrow. You either carry it or you don't. Vanessa rolled her eyes, her gold earrings swaying. Oh, please, don't start preaching. We didn't come here for another Sunday sermon. Gloria stepped forward, then her voice trembling but firm. You came here to ask for more money, didn't you? Vanessa didn't blink. We came here because we care. But if you want to be suspicious, fine. Maybe you'll care when someone else ends up making decisions for you. My pulse pounded in my ears. Decisions for me? Marcus finally looked up. We talked to a financial advisor. He said there are ways to make sure everything transitions smoothly later before things get complicated. Gloria gasped. You mean while we're still alive? Vanessa smiled sweetly. Well, you said it, not me. I felt something shift inside me, then a cold clarity cutting through the noise. I walked to the mantel, picked up the family Bible, the same one passed down from my father. I opened it to a random page, ran my hand along the worn paper, and looked back at them. You think faith is weakness? You think patience means I don't see what you're doing. But I've been watching both of you. Every lie, every plan. You want my legacy, but you'll never earn it. Vanessa stood up, her voice rising. You're paranoid. Marcus, say something. But Marcus stayed quiet again, jaw-clenched, eyes darting toward the door. I saw it then, fear. Not of me, but of her. He was trapped in his own house of pride and debt, and she was the one holding the keys. I set the Bible back on the mantel, slow and deliberate. You've made your point, I said. Now make your exit. Vanessa grabbed her purse. You'll regret this. Old men like you always do, too proud to see straight. I smiled, but it wasn't the warm kind. Pride's what built this roof. And it'll stand long after the rain washes your footprints off my porch. They left without another word. The screen door slammed, rattling the glass. For a while I just stood there listening to the silence settle. Gloria touched my arm. Jeremiah, are you all right? I nodded slowly, though my heart felt like it was splitting. All right enough to know this ain't over. Outside their car, engine started, gravel crunching as they drove off. The sunlight hit the window just right, catching the faint reflection of my face, older, wearier, but sharper than ever. I knew that look. It was the same one my father had when he caught a man stealing from the church offering box. That night I couldn't sleep. I kept hearing her voice calling me old man, like I was something disposable, a relic from another time. I thought about every hour I'd worked, every dollar I'd saved, every prayer I'd whispered over Marcus's future. I thought about how easily they dismissed it all. When Gloria drifted off beside me, I slipped out of bed and sat in my office, the same one Marcus used to sneak into as a kid pretending to be a preacher. I opened my laptop and began reviewing every account, every asset, every paper I had. If Vanessa thought I was blind, she'd soon learn I'd built my life by paying attention. The cursor blinked on the screen, waiting. My hands didn't shake. For the first time in a long while, they felt steady. Because deep down, I already knew something bigger was coming. And when it did, I'd be ready. The night I finally said no to Marcus, the house felt like it was holding its breath. The air was heavy with the smell of Gloria's cornbread cooling on the counter, but it couldn't cover the bitterness already brewing in the room. Marcus sat across from me at the table, jaw-tight, eyes darting between the bills spread out in front of him and the checkbook I refused to touch. You'd rather hoard money than help your own family, he said, his voice low, but shaking with fury. I didn't flinch. I'd heard those words before from other men who didn't want to take responsibility for their own mistakes. But hearing it from my son, my only boy, cut deep. I looked at him the way I used to, when he lied about breaking windows with his friends waiting for him to show a flicker of truth of shame. There was none. Only entitlement. Marcus, I said slowly, this isn't about money. It's about you learning to stand on your own 2 feet. He leaned forward, his palms flat on the table, and for a moment I saw the man I'd raised the strength, the determination, but it was poisoned now by pride. Stand on my feet. I've been standing my whole life while you sit on everything. You think I don't know what you've got tucked away? The house, the insurance, the rental property in Gulfport. You're just sitting on it while the rest of us struggle. Gloria tried to ease the tension, her voice soft trembling. Marcus, your father's worked for everything he has. He's never been selfish. He snapped his head toward her. Stay out of it, Mama. You don't know what it's like trying to build something in this world anymore. I felt something cold rise in me. Don't talk to your mother like that, I said. He rolled his eyes, a gesture that made me want to grab him by the collar like I did when he was 15 and thought he was grown. But this time he wasn't a boy who could be set straight with a talk. He was a man hardened by bad choices. Every time I come here, he said, slamming his hand down so hard the salt shaker tipped over, you preach about responsibility, about faith. But when it comes to helping your own family, suddenly you're broke. Funny how that works. I stared at him for a long time, my chest burning, but my voice stayed steady. The truth is, son, I've helped you more than you ever knew. Every time you missed a payment, I covered it. Every time you called from a police station, I paid it. Every time Vanessa ran your credit cards into the ground, I cleaned it up. And every single time I prayed you'd learn. But you didn't. You just waited for the next rescue. He stood so fast his chair scraped across the floor. So that's what this is about, throwing everything in my face. It's about me being done, I said. The words hung there like smoke. His mouth opened but no sound came out. Then he laughed, short and bitter. Done. You're my father. You don't get to be done. I rose slowly, my knees aching but my back straight. Watch me. For a second I thought he'd hit me. His fists clenched, his breath ragged. But he just stood there, his eyes full of hate I didn't recognize. The same boy who used to sit on my lap during thunderstorms now looked at me like I was his enemy. Gloria whispered, Marcus, please, but he wasn't listening. He started pacing, running a hand through his hair, muttering to himself. You think you're teaching me something, but you're just jealous. Jealous that I'm not like you, stuck in this old house, stuck in this small life. I felt the sting of his words, but not the truth of them. I'd built a life out of hard work and integrity. He wanted shortcuts, always had. I'm not jealous, Marcus, I said. I'm disappointed. You don't see that everything I have was meant for you to inherit someday. But not like this. Not by demand. Not by disrespect. He stopped pacing and looked at me, his expression changing from anger to something meaner, smaller. If you think you can keep me out, you're wrong. I'll get what's mine, one way or another. The room went quiet except for the ticking of the clock on the wall. Gloria's eyes filled with tears. I took a deep breath, the kind that comes before a storm. Then you'll have to live long enough to see what's really yours, I said. He grabbed his jacket, knocking the chair over as he left. The front door slammed so hard the walls shook. Gloria buried her face in her hands, whispering prayers that felt too late. I just stood there, staring at the empty space he left behind. That night I sat in my study with a glass of bourbon, staring at the framed photo of Marcus when he was 8, missing teeth, eyes bright, holding the baseball bat I bought him for his birthday. I wondered when I'd lost him. Maybe it was gradual, the way erosion takes land a grain at a time. Or maybe it was sudden, like tonight when the ground finally gave way. I thought about calling him, apologizing for how it ended, but I stopped myself. Not this time. Not again. Because somewhere deep inside, I knew that if I gave him one more inch, he'd take everything I had left, my money, my peace, my pride. The house felt different after that. Gloria tried to fill it with hymns playing soft gospel on the old record player, but even those songs couldn't wash out the echo of his anger. Sometimes I'd wake in the middle of the night and think I heard his car in the driveway, but when I looked out the window there was nothing but empty dark and the sound of the crickets. 2 days later, a letter came. No return address, just my name written in Marcus's jagged handwriting. Inside a single line, "You'll regret choosing money over blood." Gloria found me sitting at the kitchen table, the letter open beside my coffee. "What does it say?" she asked. I didn't answer. I folded the note and slipped it into my Bible between the Psalms and Proverbs. She sat down across from me, her hands clasped. "You think he means it?" I looked out the window at the oak tree Marcus used to climb as a boy, the same tree I'd built a swing on with my own hands. The wind was strong that day, the branches swaying like they were warning me. "Yeah," I said finally. "I think he does." Gloria shivered. "Then what do we do?" I didn't answer right away. I just watched the leaves twist and spin in the light like something unseen was stirring them up. "We wait," I said softly, "and we stay ready." Because deep down, I already knew Marcus wasn't finished with me yet. And whatever was coming next, it wouldn't be a plea for forgiveness. It would be something far darker. The house grew too quiet that week. No phone calls, no footsteps on the porch. Just the slow ticking of the old clock above the fireplace and the creak of the wooden floors that had carried generations of our family. Gloria moved through the silence like someone trying not to wake a ghost. Every evening she set 2 plates, then hesitated before setting a third. Her hands trembling slightly as if part of her still expected Marcus to walk through the door and say he was sorry. But the phone stayed dead and the door stayed shut. The air itself felt heavy, thick with words we didn't say out loud. On the 3rd night I caught her praying again before dinner. Her head was bowed, voice soft, almost breaking. "Lord, keep my son safe even when he walks in darkness." I closed my eyes and tried to join her, but the words wouldn't come. My faith had always been steady, the kind that doesn't shake even when the world does. But lately I felt like a man standing in an empty church hearing echoes of his own voice where God's used to be. The choir practiced that evening down at the church, their faint harmony floating across the neighborhood like wind through leaves. Gloria hummed along under her breath, her voice still sweet despite the years. I sat in my chair by the window pretending to read the paper, but every note made me ache a little more. Faith was supposed to bring peace. Lately it only brought memories. Sometimes I'd think I heard Marcus's car outside, that low rumble of his engine, but when I looked out, it was just another neighbor driving home. The shadows in the yard stretched longer each night. Even the dog next door stopped barking. The silence was alive, thick, and waiting. On Wednesday morning I went to the church early to fix a leak in the roof. Reverend Carter stopped by while I was packing up. He was a good man, the kind who saw too much but never said it outright. "Haven't seen Marcus around," he said gently, wiping his forehead. "Everything all right at home?" I wanted to tell him the truth, that my son had turned into someone I barely recognized. But instead I smiled. "We're fine, Reverend. Just giving him space." He nodded like he believed me, but I saw the doubt in his eyes. When I came home, Gloria was sitting on the porch with a Bible in her lap, her lips moving silently. The afternoon light caught the silver in her hair, and for a moment I saw how tired she looked, tired in the kind of way that prayer alone couldn't fix. I sat beside her. "He'll call," I said, even though I didn't believe it. She smiled weakly. "You always say that." "I have to," I told her. "Otherwise, what's left?" That night I dreamed of Marcus as a little boy running barefoot through the backyard, his laughter echoing like bells. When I woke, my hands were clenched so tight my nails had left marks in my palms. Gloria was already up, the smell of coffee drifting through the house. She looked at me over her cup, eyes soft but distant. "You were talking in your sleep," she said. "You called his name." I didn't answer. I couldn't tell her what I'd seen in that dream, the boy laughing, then turning to face me with eyes that weren't his own, eyes full of resentment. By Friday, the silence had turned mean. It crept into everything: the hum of the refrigerator, the distant train whistle at midnight, even the way the wind pushed against the windows. I started leaving the TV on just for noise, but even the news anchors sounded like they were whispering. Gloria cooked less, spoke less. She started knitting again, something she hadn't done in years, her needles clicking softly in rhythm like a heartbeat. One evening after dinner, she reached across the table and took my hand. "Jeremiah," she said quietly, "you can't hold on to anger forever. It'll eat you alive." "I'm not angry," I said, but my voice betrayed me. She gave me that look only a wife of 40 years can give, the kind that sees through everything. "Then what are you?" I stared at the candle flickering between us. The flame bent and wavered but never went out. "Tired," I said finally. "Tired of feeling like I failed him." She squeezed my hand, her thumb tracing the veins along my wrist. "You didn't fail him. He failed himself." The clock struck 9. Outside, a train passed its horn low and distant. I felt something shift in the air, then something unspoken but sharp, like the silence had grown teeth. That night the phone rang once, a single short ring. Gloria jumped up, rushing to answer, but when she picked up there was only static. She stood there holding the receiver to her ear, whispering, "Hello, hello," until I gently took it from her hand and hung it up. We stared at each other. Neither of us said what we were thinking, that it could have been him, or that it could have been nothing at all. The next morning, the church choir came by the house unannounced. They said they were doing rounds, bringing songs and blessings to members in need. They stood in our front yard and sang "His Eye is on the Sparrow." Gloria wept quietly through the whole song. I stood beside her, hands in my pockets, staring at the horizon. Every word hit like confession. When the last note faded, the silence that followed felt almost sacred, like the calm before something inevitable. After they left, Gloria leaned against me, her head on my shoulder. "Maybe this is God's way of testing our faith," she murmured. "Or maybe it's His way of preparing us," I said. She lifted her head. "For what?" I looked toward the mailbox at the end of the drive. The flag was up, though neither of us had sent a letter. "For whatever comes next," I said. That evening, the sun dipped low, turning the sky into a bruise of purples and reds. I watched it fade while Gloria cleared the table. Somewhere in the distance, thunder rumbled deep and slow. It hadn't rained in weeks, but the smell of it hung in the air. When I turned from the window, Gloria was standing still, staring at the front door. "Did you hear that?" she whispered. I listened. Nothing. Then a faint rustle. Something brushing against the porch railing. Maybe the wind. Or maybe not. I stepped closer to the door, heart pounding, and glanced through the side window. The porch was empty, but on the doormat sat a small brown package. No return address. No sound but the distant rumble of thunder. Gloria's voice trembled. "Jeremiah." Who would send something this late? I didn't answer. The silence had finally broken, and what waited outside was worse than any sound at all. The UPS truck rolled away before I even opened the door. The box sat there on the porch, neat and square, no markings except my name printed clean across the label. It wasn't heavy when I picked it up, but it had a strange balance to it, like something alive might be shifting inside. Gloria came up behind me, wiping her hands on her apron. "Who's it from?" she asked. There was no return address, just a scrawl that looked almost familiar. I felt my stomach tighten. Marcus had handwriting like that, sharp, impatient, always leaning forward as if he was racing time. Gloria frowned. "Jeremiah, wait." I looked down at her, but she wasn't looking at me. Her eyes were on the box, fixed. "Do you hear that?" she whispered. I tilted my head. At first I thought it was the wind cutting across the porch, but then I heard it too. Something faint, dry, like air escaping through a crack. A hiss. The hair rose on the back of my neck. "Probably a leak," I said, setting it on the table by the door. Might be some kind of gift. Maybe he... She grabbed my wrist tighter than I expected. No, baby. Look at those holes. There were small punctures along the sides, evenly spaced, almost deliberate. Too clean for shipping damage. The sound inside grew louder, a subtle movement like something brushing cardboard. "Jeremiah," she said again, her voice barely more than a breath. "Don't open it." My mouth went dry. The last words she'd said like that were years ago, the night the doctor told us Marcus might not make it through his pneumonia as a child. That same quiet fear. The same pleading tone. Only this time the danger wasn't sickness. It was our son. I stared at the box. "Call the police," I said. Her eyes widened. "You think he—" "I don't know what I think," I said, my voice cracking halfway through. "But I'm not taking chances." She disappeared into the kitchen, hands shaking as she reached for the phone. I could hear her explaining, her voice steadying as she spoke to dispatch. I stayed there frozen in the hallway, the box just a few feet away, the sound inside now unmistakable, sliding, coiling, alive. Every instinct told me to back away, but I couldn't. I just kept staring at the label. The sender line was blank, but under the shipping barcode in tiny letters was a message. "Happy Father's Day." My blood turned cold. Gloria came back, clutching the phone. "They're sending someone. They said don't touch it." I nodded, still staring. The faint smell of cardboard mixed with something metallic, something wrong. I thought about every conversation with Marcus in the last year, the anger, the resentment, the way his eyes looked when I told him no. I'd seen hatred before, but never from someone who shared my blood. 10 minutes passed, maybe 15. The sound in the box grew quieter, then stopped altogether. Gloria kept pacing, her rosary beads slipping through her fingers like water. The sirens came faintly at first, echoing off the quiet Mississippi street, then louder. When the police car pulled up, 2 officers stepped out, followed by a man in a bomb disposal vest. They told us to stay back while they examined it. The younger officer knelt beside the box, listening. He glanced up at his partner. "There's something alive in there," he said. The technician moved slowly, deliberate, his gloved hands steady. He tilted the box just enough to peek through one of the holes. "Yep," he murmured. "That's a snake." Gloria gasped, hand over her heart. "A snake?" He nodded. "Looks like a python. Non-venomous, but still dangerous." The older officer turned to me. "Sir, did you order anything recently?" I shook my head. "No." "Any reason someone might send you something? Threatening?" My throat tightened. I couldn't bring myself to say his name, not yet. "Family troubles," I said finally. "My son. We haven't spoken in a while." The technician lifted the lid with a hooked tool, and I caught a glimpse of it. A thick coil of scales gleaming under the light tongue, flicking in and out. It filled the small space, angry, suffocating. He closed the lid again and nodded to the officers. "We'll take it in. This kind of thing isn't random." They loaded it into the back of the truck and drove off, leaving behind a silence that felt sharper than before. Gloria sank into a chair, her hands still shaking. "Jeremiah," she whispered, "he wouldn't do this." He couldn't. But I knew better. The handwriting, the timing, the note that said, "Happy Father's Day." Marcus had sent his message loud and clear. That night I couldn't eat, couldn't sleep. Every sound made me flinch, the groan of the house, the whistle of the wind through the cracks in the windows. I sat up in my chair until the sun started bleeding into the sky. Gloria came out with 2 cups of coffee. Her eyes were red, her hair wrapped tight in a scarf the same way she used to when Marcus was little and sick. "What do we do now?" she asked quietly. I looked at her over the rim of my cup. "We protect ourselves." I called the detective the next morning. He said the snake had been purchased from a reptile dealer 2 towns over, paid in cash but ordered online. The shipping address matched my credit card number. Someone had used my information to pay for it. I didn't need to guess who. When I hung up, Gloria was watching me from the doorway. Was it him, she asked? I nodded. She closed her eyes. Lord have mercy. I walked to the window, looking out at the empty street, the same one Marcus used to ride his bike down, yelling for me to watch how fast he could go. The same road he'd now turned into a battlefield. Mercy, I said quietly. That's not what he's after. The sun climbed higher, bright and merciless. I stood there until the light burned through the glass, until the reflection of my face disappeared in the glare. Somewhere deep down I felt something shift. Not fear, not sadness. Something colder. The kind of clarity that comes when you realize blood doesn't always mean loyalty. And though the morning looked calm, I knew it was only the beginning. Because snakes don't come alone. They come from somewhere, and sometimes they come back. They came back the next day, 2 detectives this time. One of them, a tall man with a gray mustache, had that tired look of someone who'd seen too much, but still didn't quite know what to do with what he saw. The other was younger, clean-shaven, sharp-eyed. They didn't sit down right away. They just stood in the doorway, glancing around like the walls themselves might tell them something. Gloria stood by the counter, clutching her coffee cup with both hands as if it were the only solid thing left in the room. Mr. Brooks, the older one, said, his voice calm but firm. We've confirmed where the package came from. The snake wasn't venomous, but it was intentionally shipped to your address. The payment came from a credit card registered to you. I felt my stomach drop. That's impossible, I said. That card's been in my wallet the whole time. The younger one stepped forward. Sir, it was an online purchase made from an account linked to your name. The IP address traces back to an apartment complex over in Biloxi. Gloria's voice cracked. That's where Marcus lives. They exchanged a quick glance. Then the older one nodded slowly. Yes, ma'am. That's what we found. The room seemed to tilt slightly, like gravity had changed. I sat down, my hands gripping the arms of the chair. You're telling me my own son used my card to send me a snake? The younger one didn't answer right away. It looks that way. The order was placed a few days before Father's Day. It included specific instructions: vent holes, expedited delivery, signature not required. He looked at me carefully. We believe it was meant to scare you, but it could have gone very wrong. Gloria covered her mouth. Oh, Lord. The older detective stepped closer. Mr. Brooks, has your son ever shown signs of violence? Any threats, physical confrontations? I shook my head. Not before this year. He's been angry, yes, but words were always his weapon. Until now. They both scribbled notes. The younger one asked for Marcus's number, his address, the car he drove. I gave them everything. The older one patted my shoulder before leaving. We'll reach out to him. Try to resolve this peacefully. Peacefully. The word felt empty. After they left, the silence that followed was worse than before. Gloria sat across from me at the table, staring down at the wood grain. I could see her lips moving, but no sound came out. She was praying again. I didn't stop her. I didn't join her either. My faith felt bruised hollow. When I finally found my voice, it sounded foreign to me. He used my card. She nodded weakly. You've always trusted him too much. I looked at the cross hanging over the doorway. For the first time, I wondered if forgiveness was supposed to have a limit. That evening, the sun sank low, throwing long streaks of orange across the living room. I poured myself a drink, though it didn't taste like anything. The world felt off balance, like the ground had shifted under the house. Gloria sat by the window, staring out at nothing. Every time headlights passed, she flinched. What if he comes here, Jeremiah? She whispered. I wanted to tell her not to worry, but I couldn't, because part of me wondered if she was right. Marcus was unpredictable now, driven by pride, maybe shame, maybe both. The phone rang just after dusk. I let it ring twice before answering. It was the younger detective. Mr. Brooks, we spoke with your son, he said. He denies everything. Claims someone must have stolen his Wi-Fi or hacked your card. Of course he did. I could almost hear his voice, smooth and steady, lying the way only he could, like a man who'd rehearsed it in the mirror. The detective hesitated. "We can't prove intent yet, but we're keeping a record. If anything else happens, you call us immediately." After I hung up, Gloria asked what he said. I didn't repeat the details. "They're looking into it," I said simply. We ate dinner in silence. The stew cooled on our plates untouched. At one point, Gloria reached across the table, her eyes wet. "I don't understand what's happening to him." I did. I just didn't want to say it out loud. The boy I raised was gone. What was left was a man hollowed out by resentment, wearing his old face like a disguise. Later that night, I sat in my study staring at the framed picture of him at 12 holding the fish he caught at Lake Pontchartrain. His smile back then was real bright proud. I tried to remember what I'd said to him that day. Something about patience, I think. About how good things take time. I wondered what kind of man I would have become if my own father had given up on me that easily. But this wasn't the same. This was something darker. This was betrayal wrapped in blood ties and digital fingerprints. The next morning, Gloria insisted on going to church early to light a candle for him. I stayed behind. The walls of the house felt closer than usual, like they were pressing in. I walked from room to room, checking locks, checking windows, not out of fear but out of habit. My mind was running through what-ifs. What if the box had been worse? What if he'd sent something that didn't just hiss? The phone rang again around noon. Unknown number. I almost didn't pick up, but something made me. The voice on the other end was Marcus. Calm. Too calm. "Pops," he said. "I heard you called the cops on me." I stayed silent. "You think I'd hurt you?" he asked, his tone light but cutting. "After everything you've done." "You used my card," I said. "You sent that thing here." He chuckled softly. "You really think I'd waste my time on something like that? Maybe someone's trying to make you think that." "Marcus," I said, my voice low, "I know when my son's lying." The pause that followed was long. When he finally spoke, his voice was colder. "Maybe you don't know me as well as you think." The line went dead. I stared at the phone until the screen dimmed. The air in the house felt thicker than ever. When Gloria came home and saw my face, she didn't ask. She just wrapped her arms around me the way she used to when storms hit at night. But this wasn't weather. This was something man-made, something deliberate. I looked over her shoulder at the front door. The faint outline of the package still lingered in my mind, the sound, the weight, the message. And though the police had taken it away, I couldn't shake the feeling that the real danger hadn't left with them. It was still out there waiting, maybe even closer than we thought. I dialed his number just after midnight. The house was dark except for the lamp in my study, its yellow light pooling across the desk like a small island in a sea of shadows. Gloria was asleep down the hall, her breathing soft and steady, but I couldn't rest. The conversation with the detectives kept looping in my head, the sound of Marcus's name mixed with the faint hiss of that box. My hand hovered over the phone for a long time before I finally pressed call. The line rang 3 times before he picked up. "Hey, Pops," he said, his voice light, too casual. "Didn't expect you to call this late. Everything okay?" That word "okay" almost made me laugh. Nothing about this was okay. I stared at the photo on my desk, the one of him and me at the fishing pier years ago. He couldn't have been more than 10, then grinning with his first catch, his arm around my waist. The man on the other end of the line didn't sound like that boy anymore. "You know why I'm calling," I said. He paused just long enough to let me know he'd heard the edge in my voice. "I really don't, Pops. You tell me." "That box," I said. "You sent it." He chuckled soft but sharp. "A box. You're going to have to be more specific. You know how many packages go around these days. Amazon runs half the world." My grip tightened around the phone. "Don't play dumb with me." The police traced the payment. It was my card, my name, my address. You think I wouldn't find out?" He sighed like I was a child who didn't understand how things worked. "Dad, you're wound too tight. Maybe someone hacked your account. Happens all the time. Don't go blaming family over something you don't understand." And then it came, the faint sound in the background. A laugh, a woman's laugh. Vanessa. It was quiet, almost a whisper, but it slid through the line like a knife. She said something I couldn't make out, and he laughed with her, the sound low and conspiratorial. My heart went still. "Who's with you?" I asked. He hesitated just for a beat. "Vanessa. We were just watching something." "Why? You think this is funny?" His tone shifted colder now. "I think you're making a big deal out of nothing. Maybe if you didn't keep everything locked up, people wouldn't feel like they had to get creative to get your attention." There it was, the mask slipping. That small confession wrapped in sarcasm. "You mean scare your own father?" I said quietly. He laughed again, but there was no humor in it. "You act like you're some kind of victim." "All I've ever wanted was a little help, but no Pastor Brooks doesn't bend. He just judges. You've always been better at giving sermons than second chances." Something inside me broke then, but not the way he thought it would. Not from sadness, from understanding. Every good deed, every sacrifice, every prayer I'd ever offered for him had turned into a weapon in his hands. He didn't want love. He wanted leverage. "Marcus," I said, keeping my voice low, calm, the way I used to talk to drunks at the church outreach. "I would have given you everything if you'd just asked, like a man. But you chose fear instead of honesty." He went quiet, and for a second I thought I'd reached him. Then Vanessa's voice came through louder this time. "Hang up, baby. Let the old man stew in his guilt." He didn't hang up, though. He just repeated her words, his tone mocking. "Yeah, Pops. Maybe you should sit with that guilt a while. You made me who I am, remember?" I felt something cold spread through me, slow and deliberate. "If that's true," I said, "then I failed you in ways I can't fix." The silence on the other end stretched until I could hear my own heartbeat. Then came his final words, flat and final. "Don't call me again." The line went dead. For a long time I didn't move. The phone slipped from my hand and hit the desk, the sound small but sharp in the quiet room. Outside, the cicadas hummed like static and the house creaked under the summer heat. I sat there staring at the blank space on the wall where the light didn't reach, and realized something I never thought I'd have to accept, that love, when twisted long enough, can rot into something unrecognizable. Gloria found me an hour later, still sitting there, the phone beside me, the light burning low. "You talked to him," she said softly. I nodded once. "He's gone, Gloria. Not just gone lost." She came closer, laying a hand on my shoulder. Her palm was warm, grounding, but it couldn't pull me out of the fog settling in. "You can't stop loving your child?" she whispered. "No," I said, staring at the darkness beyond the window. "But you can stop letting them destroy you." She didn't answer. We just stood there together, two people bound by blood and heartbreak, listening to the quiet hum of the night. Somewhere far off, a train wailed through the valley, the sound long and lonely. When she finally went back to bed, I stayed behind. I opened the drawer of my desk and took out the notepad I hadn't touched in years. My pen hovered over the first page. For a moment I didn't know what to write. Then I started jotting down numbers, accounts, property deeds, insurance details. Things that had once been for Marcus, meant to secure his future. By the time the sun began to rise, the list was complete. I tore it neatly down the middle. The half with his name went into the trash. I poured myself a cup of coffee and watched the light crawl across the horizon, slow and deliberate, painting the world in pale gold. My heart hurt, but my mind was clear. Because that phone call wasn't the end of something. It was the beginning of my reckoning. And when the next move came, it wouldn't be from him. It would be from me. I locked my office door that night and sat in the glow of the computer screen. The air was still, almost reverent, like the house knew something was ending. Gloria had gone to bed worn out from worry, but I couldn't sleep. Not after hearing Marcus's voice mocking cold twisted into something unrecognizable. My son's laughter still echoed in my head, mingled with that woman's giggle in the background. It sounded like betrayal dressed as love. The desk was covered in old paperwork, account statements, and yellowed envelopes with my neat handwriting across them. I'd built everything in this room by hand, the shelves, the desk, the life that filled the space. For decades, every decision I made was with him in mind. But that night, I realized I'd been financing my own undoing. I opened the laptop and pulled up the first account. The numbers glowed back at me, familiar and cruel. Savings, credit cards, insurance policies. His name was on more than I remembered. Authorized user, beneficiary, automatic transfers, a lifetime of trust written in digital ink. I hovered over the remove access button for a long moment. Part of me hesitated not because I doubted, but because of what it meant. A father cutting off his son. But love without boundaries isn't love, it's servitude. I clicked it. Then another. And another. With each password changed, each link severed something inside me uncoiled. For the first time in years, I felt the weight shift off my shoulders. The soft hum of the computer became the rhythm of liberation. When I reached the last account, the joint one we'd opened years ago for emergencies, I stopped. I remembered the day we set it up. He was 22, fresh out of college, full of promises. Just until I get on my feet, Pops. I believed him then. I wanted to believe him. But that boy was gone. I clicked close account. The screen blinked once, then went still. Just like that, it was over. I leaned back, letting the silence settle. Outside, the crickets had gone quiet. It felt like the world was holding its breath. Gloria's voice came softly from the hallway. "You're still up." I didn't turn around. "Yeah." She stepped into the doorway, her robe drawn tight around her. "What are you doing? Taking back what's mine," I said. Her eyes searched my face, and then she nodded slowly as if she understood without needing the details. "Does it hurt?" I thought about that for a long moment. "It used to," I said finally. "Now it just feels necessary." She crossed the room and placed her hand on my shoulder. "You did what you had to do." When she left, I sat there a while longer staring at the empty inbox. Every automatic payment, every quiet withdrawal that had once slipped by me, gone. For years I'd mistaken silence for peace. But silence was just the sound of slow erosion. I opened my drawer and took out the small leather-bound journal my father left me. Inside, his handwriting was careful, old-fashioned. "A man's duty is to provide, but not to enable. Love your children, but do not become their excuse." I closed the book and whispered, "You were right, old man." The storm outside began to move in thunder rolling in the distance. I unplugged the computer, stood up, and walked to the window. The reflection of my own face stared back. Older, sharper, steadier. That was when I realized something had shifted permanently. I wasn't just a father anymore. I was a man reclaiming his dignity. I walked through the house checking locks the way I always did when I couldn't sleep. When I passed Marcus's old room, I stopped. The door was half open. Inside, everything was still the way we'd left it, the trophies, the posters, the cracked baseball glove on the shelf. Dust had settled over it all like time sealing off a memory. I stepped inside. The air smelled faintly of cedar and something older, something like loss. I ran my hand along the dresser and found the picture frame tucked behind a stack of old books. It was a photo of him and me on his graduation day. He'd written on the back, "To the best dad in the world. I'll make you proud." I turned it over and set it face down on the dresser. By the time I made it back to the living room, the rain had started. It came down hard, drumming against the roof in steady rhythm. I poured myself a drink, bourbon neat, and let the burn anchor me in the moment. The phone sat silent beside me. No texts, no calls. I knew he'd figure it out soon. The next time he tried to use that card, the system would decline him. Maybe he'd get angry. Maybe he'd come here. Let him. Because I wasn't afraid anymore. I'd spent too many years letting guilt masquerade as love, paying for mistakes that weren't mine to carry. That night I understood what real fatherhood meant. It wasn't endless giving. It was drawing the line between love and foolishness, between grace and weakness. I looked out the window one last time before turning off the lights. The street was empty, rain shimmering under the lamplight. Somewhere in the distance a siren wailed low and fading. I whispered to the dark, "A father's love ain't supposed to fund a grown man's greed." Then I closed the office door behind me, slow and deliberate, like sealing off a chapter I should have ended long ago. The storm outside raged through the night, washing the dust from the windows and the weight from my soul. But as I stood there listening to the thunder roll deeper into the valley, I couldn't shake one thought: the storm wasn't over yet. It was only changing direction. The law office smelled faintly of coffee and old leather, the kind of scent that settles in over decades of quiet decisions and signed papers. My attorney Harold had been with me longer than most friends. He was slow to speak, slower to judge, which was why I trusted him with what I was about to do. I handed him the folder: bank statements, property deeds, and the draft of my will. He adjusted his glasses, flipping through each page carefully, humming the way he always did when he was thinking. "You sure about this, Jeremiah?" he asked finally. "This changes everything." "I'm sure," I said. My voice didn't shake. "Every cent goes to the grandkids. College fund, not their parents." He nodded once quietly. "Marcus won't take kindly to this." "He already took more than kindness ever owed him," I said. "I won't fund his destruction anymore." Harold leaned back, studying me. "You know most fathers leave money to ease guilt. You're doing the opposite." "Because guilt's what ruined him," I said. "I gave out of love. He took out of habit." He smiled, sad but respectful, then began typing. The keys clicked softly, rhythmic as rain on a tin roof. I watched the screen as my legacy shifted line by line, my name carving a new kind of justice into existence. When he finished, he turned the monitor toward me. "You'll need to sign here, here, and here." I signed without hesitation. Each stroke of the pen felt like closing a door that had been left open too long. When it was done, Harold looked up at me, his eyes kind. "You've chosen wisdom over forgiveness." "No," I said. "I've just learned the two aren't the same thing." He handed me the final copy, neatly folded into an envelope. "This will hold, legally speaking. But prepare yourself, Jeremiah. When the time comes, there'll be backlash." I stood, sliding the envelope under my arm. Let him be angry. Maybe it'll teach him what humility never did. Outside, the air was cool and still. I stood on the courthouse steps and watched the light fall through the oak trees, the same kind that shaded the church parking lot every Sunday morning. My hands didn't tremble. For the first time in years, I felt something close to peace. Sunday came fast. Gloria and I arrived early, as always. The choir was already warming up, voices rising like smoke. The church smelled of old hymnals and fresh lilies. Reverend Carter greeted us with that quiet understanding he carried everywhere, and when he looked into my eyes, I knew he saw it, that something inside me had settled. We sat in our usual pew, second row from the back. Gloria reached for my hand, her fingers soft and warm. The first notes of Amazing Grace filled the sanctuary, and I found myself singing not loud, but steady. The words hit different this time. I'd sung them 1,000 Sundays before, but never with this kind of clarity. I once was lost, but now am found, was blind, but now I see. I thought about Marcus, about the boy who once sat between us during service, his legs swinging, trying to sing louder than the choir. I thought about the man he'd become, the bitterness, the greed, the empty laugh over the phone. And yet standing there, I couldn't hate him, not anymore. Gloria's voice wove gently beside mine, and for a moment the years peeled away. We were just two people who'd weathered too many storms and were still standing. My eyes burned not from grief this time, but release. When the song ended, the Reverend began his sermon. He spoke about forgiveness, not the kind that excuses, but the kind that sets you free. Forgiveness, he said, isn't about forgetting what someone did. It's about remembering who you are despite it. I felt that like a hand pressing on my chest. After service, people lingered as usual, shaking hands, swapping recipes, sharing prayers. Gloria chatted with the ladies from the choir, their laughter soft and kind. I stepped outside into the sunlight, the air crisp with the smell of pine and wet grass. A few of the younger members came up to me asking about the new scholarship fund. Word had already spread. I told them the truth. It was meant for the next generation, for kids who needed a chance, not a crutch. Education's the only inheritance that doesn't rot, I said. That night at home, Gloria and I ate dinner by candlelight, just the two of us. The radio played slow gospel, and the house felt lighter than it had in months. She looked across the table and smiled. "You did right, Jeremiah." "Maybe," I said. "Or maybe I just stopped doing wrong." She reached across the table, her hand finding mine. "You still love him." "I always will," I said. "But love doesn't mean letting someone drown you." She nodded, her eyes glistening in the soft light. "The Lord will see your heart." I glanced toward the window where the moonlight brushed across the porch. "He already has," I said quietly. Later that night, I stepped out into the yard. The air smelled of honeysuckle and rain. Somewhere in the distance, a train passed, its whistle fading into the dark. I looked up at the stars and thought about the path that had brought me here, the long road between anger and grace. I knew Marcus would hear about the will soon. There'd be phone calls, maybe threats, maybe tears. But I also knew something else. This was how the story had to end. Not with revenge, not with bitterness, but with boundaries drawn in faith and light. I turned back toward the house, the windows glowing softly. Inside was peace, hard-earned and holy. And though I didn't know what tomorrow would bring, I knew one thing for certain. Whatever storm came next, I'd face it not as a father chasing his son's redemption, but as a man who had finally reclaimed his own. Life has a way of teaching us that love without limits can turn into a slow form of surrender. Jeremiah's story is a mirror for every parent who's ever given too much, hoping it would heal what only wisdom could fix. True love for our children doesn't mean rescuing them from the weight of their choices. It means trusting them to carry it. Forgiveness isn't weakness, it's release. And setting boundaries isn't cruelty, it's courage. As we grow older, we learn that peace isn't found in control, but in clarity, knowing when to hold on and when to let go. Jeremiah's strength came not from anger, but from faith, the quiet belief that doing what's right, even when it hurts, honors both love and dignity. If you've ever faced that same crossroads between your heart and your sanity, remember this: wisdom is love grown mature. Subscribe for more stories that speak to the soul and remind us that the truest revenge is living with peace, purpose, and self-respect.